Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Doof Game Club, Doof Media's exploration of the joy of play. I am Ruben Morehouse,
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
and this is our inaugural game club. Yes, this is our first time streaming. Got it on the first try, Elliot, and the first game we're talking about is Hollow Knight. So thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Yes, we're both very excited to be here.
Yes, and if you're listening to this as a podcast, shame on you. Go check it out on the YouTube. This is going to be a visual thing, so connect with the visuals. We're going to be playing videos and stuff. It's going to be very weird if you're just listening to this as audio only.
Yeah, it's up to you, but I think the video experience will be better, and not just because our faces are in it, but mostly because of the clips and pictures and stuff.
Yeah, of course, this is a community show. Thanks to the community for playing along with us. And the community is in chat as well. So chat, if you want to send messages and ask questions as we're going, we'll be responding to them and all kinds of groovy things.
Yeah. So on that note, should we start talking about Hollow Knight?
Yes. We've got video clips. Do you want to roll the first clip for us, Elliot?
Yes. Takes a second to load. Good to know.
There's Mr. Knight. I love the design. Okay, this is already great because I know this has to do with bugs, and those spiral lamps that evoke the kind of snail shells are already awesome. I know there's going to be Elliot, you can't full screen the videos because then our faces will cover them. But that's okay.
Oh, whoops. Okay.
We got the general gist. Yeah, so the first thing I really want to talk about here is the design of the game. I mean, right from the get-go, you see this beautiful, shell design lamps. And obviously you come to learn later that this game is populated in a world with bugs. But I love just how the design immediately sets that up for you with these weird snail shell lamps giving you this buggy kind of view. And then it just builds off of this with this incredible setting that's so great and immersive.
Yeah, I mean, there's some... I don't know what it is. There's something just about the art style of this game that I love, in its simplicity. It's all very simple shapes with lines going through them and very simple shading, and it's just so effective.
Yeah.
Especially mixed in with all the colors and stuff.
Yeah.
It might be one of my favorite art styles of a game ever.
It's pretty beautiful,
and
isn't it?
it's weird because it's so simple in a way, but it works.
Well, I think the strength of it, honestly, is they have this is a small team. We should say the game is Hollow Knight by Team Cherry, a team from Adelaide in South Australia. It's like a 3-person team. They had 3 or 4 people working on it. And when you have a team that is so small, you can really have cohesive, beautiful designs like that. Obviously, it takes a bit more time, but when you have one person behind the visual design for something like this, it can be this incredibly cohesive, beautiful kind of experience.
Mm. And as you mentioned in the video there as well, everything's so on the bug theme in a really fun way. I love how insectoid the whole world felt.
Yes, I love the bug. It's such a good idea for a theme as well because, bugs have this kind of inherent cuteness to them once you get past the ickiness. And this game is exactly that. It's like this cute game that also has these really unsettling and gross situations that you find yourselves in. And they just kind of work because it's all bugs. And that's just normal shit that bugs are doing.
Yeah. I completely agree. They're kind of reveling in being both cutesy and icky at the same time.
Yes, definitely. It's probably worth pointing out that this is a full spoilers discussion, and we're going to get to some really full spoilers later on. I'll try and mark the heavier spoiler stuff as we get to it, but just be warned that we're going to be talking about some of the story stuff and the ending of the game and stuff like that when we come to it. So stay frosty, folks.
Yeah. X Sith Spawn X in the chat just brought up a great point as well, which is every area in this game is so unique and distinct in its art style. I think that's something the first time I went from the Forgotten Crossroads to Green Path, it felt like I was taking the next big step because everything's
totally.
great. And then from there, all the others have at least something where you could probably show me a screenshot of it and I could be like, oh, that must be from this area of the game.
To do that, they have the beautiful soundscapes and things like ambient effects. Like Green Path has a kind of green hue to the background,
Yep.
Fog Canyon has this like pinky purpley one, and things like enemies. So you'll have these moments where, as you start getting from one place to another, as you're crossing over between these borders, you'll see an enemy that's just slightly out of place. Like, oh, this is an enemy that should be in Queen's Gardens, and then you're like, oh, I'm about to enter Queen's Gardens because I've just found this enemy. And I think that's a testament to how strong the theming of each area is, that you can immediately recognize it from these very subtle hints. Like you see a vine and you're like, oh, this is a Queen's Garden vine, so I'm about to enter Queen's Garden, or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was even a great moment I had in one thing where I was stuck in an area and I had no idea what to do, and there were just some crystals on the ground, and I just acquired the crystal heart. And so that's what I used, because I was like, oh, there's crystals here, and like that's what you were meant to do. And it's that sort of little detail that is just rampant in this game.
Yeah, you're right. As you're exploring, you really are finding all these little hints that we're going to talk about Metroidvanias a lot over the course of this discussion. Yeah. And I think one of the strongest things that this game does is the way it uses these subtle cues to remind you of things, to try and get past the problem with Metroidvanias of having to remember and backtrack.
Yeah, well, let's get there.
Yeah, totally.
So this is our next slide. This is where we're going to start getting into Metroidvania specific stuff. Obviously, what we're looking at here is a map of Hollow Nest.
Yep. No, it's called Hollow Knight, Elliot.
Yeah, sorry, the Hollow Knight Kingdom. And I think the thing I really wanted to bring up here is something I often struggle with in Metroidvanias, open world games, that sort of thing, is you lose that sense of discovery and exploration as you get into the back half of the game. At least for me, once you start to fill in the map, or you get tools that make filling in the map very easy. Maybe I'm just one of those people who optimizes the fun out of the game, but I'll use those tools to make the mapping so easy that like I lose the sense of getting lost. And I think the way Hollow Knight structures itself, both so that you don't get a map when you get to a new area, and that even after you have a map, it only updates when you go back to a bench. I think that really, like, even towards the end of the game, I still felt like I was going to new places and getting lost. And I just don't think, like, from my memories of playing old Metroid games, which is my only other real experience in Metroidvanias, I don't remember feeling like that towards the back half of the game anywhere near as much.
Yeah, I want to pull out the wording of feeling like you're getting lost, because it's interesting that that's a positive, but it is like, that's the joy of these games, right? Is you're thrown into a new environment and you have to kind of figure it out. It's like a little puzzle where you have to figure out how things connect, and, oh, well, this is a dead end, so maybe I'm meant to go over this way, and, oh, I found these papers, so I must be about to find a map. Like all these little pieces of exploration. The fact that you have to find, I think his name is Cornifer, the map guy, in each new area is such a little fun quest to start you for each area that gets you to explore it naturally.
Especially after the first couple, where you start to realize that the papers are clues before you can even hear his voice. And like you feel like a very clever detective, despite the fact you're just following breadcrumbs that were very intentionally left out for you.
Yes.
Yeah. And like, yeah, because I mean, people's mileage may vary. Like, different people are going to have different like opinions on what the best parts of this game are, because there's so much to it. But, like, exploration is my favorite part of games in general. And so I was just so impressed that Hollow Knight, even towards the end, had me feeling like I was exploring new ways in a way that was risky, and I was at risk of getting lost.
Yeah, I had a few times where I genuinely got lost, especially places like there's an area called Deep Nest, which I think is meant to be intentionally confusing to the player, and like intentionally dark and hard to navigate. It really does give you this great like escalation of the game while still maintaining this initial sense of joy and discovery as you get to each new area.
Yeah. Okay.
We should talk about, I want to talk about one of the problems with that, because
that's the next slide, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of cool things that happen. Let's roll the clip first, Elliot. Let's do that. About Metroidvanias is, I see this thing and I know I have to get to it, but I'm 99% sure I just don't have the tools I need to get to it right now. And so it's like, I should write it down that I can come back here later, or just kind of remember it, which is fine, I guess. But it's just frustrating to me to have something in front of me that I just am 100% incapable, and there's no way of me being capable of getting it without just playing the game further and coming back to it. I'm gonna write this down because it's a criticism. Oh yes, King, exactly. Like, maybe if I just lined the jump up just perfectly, but I've played enough Metroidvanias to know that that's not that's not a good way.
I'm not gonna lie. I also spent about a minute here trying to make that jump
perfect. It's like, okay, they're gonna give me a double jump. The problematic thing about it is you actually can. I saw a video clip of someone finding a way to do it without needing the yeah, you can kind of brute force your way through it by tricking the game into doing something that I don't think is intended. But yeah, I kind of wanted to touch on this because I like this for content, for gating content that you can come back to later in terms of unlocking a new area, for example. But when it is a cosmetic thing like this, it just drives me a bit crazy. Like a collectible that you don't need to get, having it that I explore and my reward for exploration is something that I can't achieve is so frustrating to me.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, I know you and I just in private have had what's called, like, I talk about 3D platformers a lot, and like this is rampant in like Banjo-Kazooie and a lot of them as well, where like I think it's fine. Like, you know, there are a few points where you get the big black bars that you need the shade cloak to get through.
Yeah.
And I don't mind those as much because that's basically this big clue telling me, hey, there's stuff behind here, but you can't get it yet. That's different to me than putting the grub there where you can't reach it, because it's like, it's just teasing you with a collectible that you can't get.
Yeah, it's not a skill thing of figure out a more skilled way to do this. It's just a thing of don't forget this. and what ended up happening was, I don't think you actually got up to this, Elliot, but there's a part where you get something called the collector's map, which is a map of where all the grubs are. And so I never saw this one again because I never passed through this one specific part of the infected crossroads, or the forgotten crossroads, I guess. And so it's like, it literally just turned it into a point on a map that I had to come back to as a fetch quest later. Yep. And when I got back to it, it was trivial. There was no fun in collecting. I just went there and got it. And it just kind of took this experience of finding the grubs, which was one of my favorite parts of the game, and made this one just not a fun experience. And, you know, it doesn't have to be a perfect game, but I just kind of thought I'd point this out as this is the problem sometimes with Metroidvanias, is they do things like this, and it just drives me a bit crazy.
No, I agree. Like, and it bugs me in other games like Banjo-Kazooie as well, where like Stelhex in the comments is pointing out that like the game did add map pins, which like helpful for this, but like, at least for me, I'm someone who tends to try and explore every nook and cranny I can. Yeah. And what I end up with is way too many map pins for them to actually be useful.
Yeah, about halfway through the game, I had used all my map pins, and I had a kind of convoluted system for, a red pin means this, and a gold pin maybe means this. And I was, of course, forgetting them between each gameplay session, and I have to go back and visit pins and be like, oh, that pin was this, that's right. Just because, you know, I don't know it.
I wasted so many of my pins. I found the writhing roots, the things that you whack to get all the soul essence out of. And I'd been marking all of those because I couldn't figure out what to do with them. And then I get the dream nail, go back to the map shop, and there's pins for them already. And I was like, I could have been using these for so many better things.
I called those the bicycle trees. But yeah, exactly. The kinds of things where you aren't sure what you should be marking and what you shouldn't.
Yeah.
I have throughout the entire game, I found a character called the Mask Painter about halfway through. And I've had him marked as a pin the entire time. And finally, after I finished my final stream last night, I Googled what are you meant to do with the Mask Painter? Because I kept going back to him at different points throughout the game trying to interact.
See if he can do anything.
And he just doesn't. He doesn't do anything. And it was like, well, okay, like, you know, I'm almost being discouraged for wanting to engage the game in that way.
Yeah, I do. I think something in general Hollow Knight does absolutely fantastically is it always felt like every nook and cranny rewarded me for finding it. Like, even if it was just a little thing like that you had to whack a couple of times and you get 20 geo. Like it still felt like
that's enough of a reward.
It was like, I'm being rewarded for finding this. And they're just, I think the fact that the game is so consistently fantastic at it makes those few examples
Yeah,
where it's not stand out. So like we're not meaning to sound negative. It's just like
yeah.
yeah, like similarly the writhing roots, like just to sort of get out of the way. I kind of see those as dumb filler. Like it's just get a big room, stick a tree in it somewhere, and make you walk around the room again. Like I don't really see what that added to the experience, but like that's like my one gameplay
I,
complaint, right? So
I think it's their way of introducing platforming challenges before you get to the really hard platforming challenges. Because there are some like intentionally very difficult platforming bits, but for most of this isn't a game where the platforming is really difficult. Um,
mm,
and I think the bicycle trees are a way of saying, "Hey, here's a bit of a platforming challenge. Give it a try." Like an
yeah,
introduction to that.
that's fair. I definitely just saw them as filler, mostly because I would explore the room and find the tree last, and I was like, "Oh fuck, gotta
Oh
go
yeah,
back,
now I have to
gotta
do
go
another
back around."
exploration. I want to, before we go back into praising this game, I want to talk about one other thing that I didn't like about it.
Okay, let's get this all out at the start, I suppose.
Which is, again, talking about the idea of Metroidvanias. I think Hollow Knight is a game that so well gives you threads to pull on, which is great. Like for most of the game, I always felt that I had at least one or two threads that I could chase down to
Yeah,
find what something I could do next, even if it wasn't the thing I was meant to do next. It was at least something. But there's this when that fails, it fails so hard, right?
yeah.
Um, and so there was this part. Well, let's play the clip and then I'll talk about it.
Okay. Oh, it's sped up and everything.
Yeah, production quality.
So is this just you looking for something to do?
Yes. I spent 15 minutes running back and forth here. Genuinely, 15 minutes trying to figure out where's the next place I'm meant to go here. Until finally I did the right thing, which was just looking up in the right place. It was really rough, Elliot. It was like a 15-minute chunk of time.
Oh wow, we're only like halfway through this.
Yeah, yeah. And this is not just sped up. I've actually trimmed a bunch out of this as well because it was just so much time.
um, yeah, I mean, I've definitely like I had a similar thing in Crystal Peak, and Kipos had to tell me where to go because I was
Yeah,
just completely stuck. I mean, it's just a bit of a risk with Metroidvanias, I suppose, is if you miss some of the clues, then like you miss them,
yeah.
and you don't
And
know what to do.
the clue that I missed here is I'm about to find it, but you'll see. I basically just realized or was told in chat I needed to look up, and so I'm looking up more, and finally,
I like the little pause after you land where you're probably just like, God damn
yeah. And it's like
it.
what I spent 20 minutes just because I didn't like I was thrown in a big open world, and I knew there was more for me to do here, and I just couldn't find it. And in that situation, it just feels so terrible. Like I don't think there was a good sense of like when I finally found it, I was like, oh okay. And it wasn't like a good feeling to finally figure out what I was meant to have figured out. It didn't feel satisfying in that instance. It was just a frustrating experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just like a hazard of the genre, I
Yeah,
suppose. Like, yeah, like it's hard to really come down on Hollow Knight for it because at the same
yeah,
time,
yeah,
it's just a tricky line to walk because if they're spelling everything out for you
yes,
in a way that is completely unambiguous, then you're in a Skyward Sword situation,
yeah.
where it's just not fun. Um, so yeah, like I think it's just a risk that you sort of run into with playing
I,
games like this.
again, I think it's just a fact that because they're so good at dropping breadcrumbs for you for most of the time, when a breadcrumb isn't quite there for you, it just is the worst experience.
Yeah, yeah, but it's so good when it works though.
It is. It's pretty great. Well, let's talk about that more, actually.
Yes. Oh, this one's my video. So, actually, before I play the video, I should talk. Like, so one of the things I want to talk about here is there's sort of like two types of skill progression in games, right? Like you have the ones where you get more powerful in the game, like you get better items, like you upgrade your nail and you can do more attack. And then there's just like you get better. And like I've got some examples in my head of games that went one way or the other too hard. Like Breath of the Wild, I played 200 hours of that game. I don't think I was much better at it at the end. I just think I had bigger weapons.
Mm.
I think Hollow Knight does such a fantastic job of making me feel like I'm getting better as well as getting more powerful, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And like a lot of that comes from how great the enemy design is in this. Like so much of it is you've got to learn them, and then even if some of them are simple, like later when you re-encounter them and you're like, oh, I know, I just need to, pogo on this guy a couple of times, or hit him and then dash back and then dash forward and hit him again. And it makes you feel really clever and skilled.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a few enemy patterns that when you learn them, it's just like flicking a switch and you suddenly feel like, oh, I've just figured it out. Like I've just solved this little combat puzzle.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think Hollow Knight's so good at that.
I think all of the combat in Hollow Knight is really a puzzle, and I think that that's really cool, the way that they've structured that. And so this video I've got here, I think is a really fun example of how they make you feel that way. So here, like, I've just encountered this guy for the first time, and he's like framed as a boss. Like you can see I'm locked in the room. It actually took me about 2 to 3 goes to get him, and then 5 minutes later, I was just like walking through the bit after him, and now there's 2 of them. And like, so the fact that Hollow Knight will frame something as a boss, and then literally 5 minutes later stick you 2 of them, and you see I just ran away because I was terrified at this point. But later on I was coming back, and even without nail upgrades, I was taking down 3-4 of those guys at once, like easily. And it's just because the way Hollow Knight trains you to learn the enemies so that you can defeat them even without the upgrades. Like the upgrades almost just feel like a convenience against old enemies. I was upgrading for enemies I was going to fight in the future, not to more easily kill enemies I could already kill.
Yeah, once you've beaten an enemy a few times, you've learned the patterns, and so you feel like you're this kind of explorer that's just figured out you figured out the stuff that you need to do. You figured out how to beat this guy,
You're right. This game's such a Metroidvania, even all the combat is a bit of an exploration puzzle. Like,
yes, exactly.
It's so cool. I mean, Infected Crossroads is also like an interesting kind of take on some of this like skill progression thing, because that was obviously the one area where they were just like, okay, we're just going to make this straight up harder after a certain point in the game.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's great. I think another thing that Hollow Knight does along those lines is it's really clever about how it teaches you its mechanics. It's got a lot of like emergent gameplay where you're basically learning your things as you go. And this video that I've got is a pretty good example. So let's start with this.
Yeah, okay. Should I have sound on for this, or?
Yeah, I want to turn on the sound.
Okay, sorry, I'll restart that one.
Oh my god. Okay, and now the fun of the game becomes unlocked. Now we get it. Now we get how it works. Oh, that's so juicy.
So this is you discovering pogoing, I'm assuming?
Yeah, exactly. This is the first time I'd ever pogoed. And it just immediately clicked in my brain. Oh shit, like this is a new way of exploring and dealing with enemies and doing all kinds of things. And it feels so good when something clicks like that. Something that you could have done the entire time, and it just clicks at one point.
Yeah, I like the similar thing. I actually didn't figure it out on enemies. I figured it out on those giant like dune type worm things that come up and down. And
they're like golems or something.
Yeah.
Called.
And you can pogo off one to get to like a little cache of geo. And I was standing there trying to figure out how to get to it, and I was like, wait, can I bounce off them? And then I just started trying it on enemies. And you're right, like the way they don't teach you these things, but they give you clues so that you feel clever when you figure it out is so much fun.
I think pogoing is a great example as well, because I don't think there's a place where you're required to be able to pogo, except when you get to some post end game content.
That said, I don't know if you could finish the game without it.
Right. It just is a thing where you're just going to figure it out at some point during your game that you can fucking DuckTales bounce on these guys, and then you've just unlocked completely through your own design a new way of doing things that's going to be so helpful to you. Like, it's so cool.
Yeah, I completely agree. I will say it's, again, this is another tricky thing to balance with not spelling out everything your character can do, because there were definitely, it's probably more related to the charms, and we'll get into that later, but there was definitely some things that I just didn't really realize were in the game until like way too late.
Yeah.
So that's obviously the other side of it, is you can get towards the end of the game and be like, are you fucking serious? I could do this the whole time.
Yeah, I wonder though if that's a problem. Like, well, we'll get to that maybe a bit later. We can talk about that a bit more.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Let's talk about the soul mechanic, Elliot.
Yes. I just wanted to bring this up because, especially those of you who listen to like Mark Brown's Game Maker's Toolkit videos, which you all should, they're really good. He often talks about like having one thing do two things. It's just good game design. And I think Soul is like just such a good example of that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in a Metroid game, you go around and you're killing enemies, you're hoping they drop health, not missiles, because you're full in missiles, you need health, and then, you know, they'll keep dropping missiles, and it just pisses you off. I love the way Hollow Knight is like, look, you have this one energy bar, you can use it to get health, or you can use it to be offensive. Like, it's up to you. And like, I just love that so much. Like, even towards the end of the game in bosses, I was still deciding on the fly. It's like, fuck, do I want to try and heal, or am I just going to like soul blast this guy, you know?
Yeah, it feels like you're gambling every time you either decide to heal or you throw off a quick soul blast in a chance you have, and you're like, oh, that's one less point of health I can get back. Yeah, it's so clever. And the thing I really love about it is, in a game like this where you're exploring a lot and you come across enemies, you know, the same enemies multiple times, it would be so easy to make you just want to skip over enemies and not bother to fight them. But the strong enemy design, combined with the fact that soul is this key resource that you're basically gathering throughout the entirety of the game, it means that you actually are encouraged and incentivized to fight enemies and practice on them as you're playing through rather than skip them, which I found a really clever trick.
Especially because when you're still bad against them, you're going to keep losing health, which means you need to keep fighting other enemies because you're slowly actually losing the soul that you're trying to farm. Yeah, absolutely.
It's just such a clever mechanic. I really love some of these core mechanics in Hollow Knight that are just so clever and used in so many neat ways.
Yeah. Framing everything around one energy currency, I think, is just so smart, and tying that to your health in that way. And like, I guess, you know, maybe this should have been on another slide, but I just thought of it. But I think Hollow Knight does something interesting as well, because it's obviously got Geo as its main currency. But then later on, you start to get like essence as well, and also you're finding, you know, the Hallow Nest seals, the King's emblem or idol or whatever,
the artifacts.
Yeah, and then even like, you know, there's obviously other collectibles aside from, you know, your standard like heart pieces, or they're called mask fragments, I think, in this. You know, but like, there's a shopkeeper's key that I found, and you took it up to the shopkeeper, and then he would sell me more shit. And it's just like, I never would have been able to buy this stuff if I hadn't found that key. I think usually I hate it when games have like 10 forms of currency or all sorts of various collectibles. I like it to be more streamlined, but it felt very natural in Hollow Knight. Like, there was a clear and distinct domain for each of these things. Maybe with the exception of the shopkeeper's key, which felt a bit like, well,
all the simple keys as well are a bit of a...
Yeah, like, I'm glad I found this, because if I hadn't, I'd just be fucked.
Yeah.
But like, you know, Essence versus Geo versus the other collectibles, there's always sort of a sense of what this is meant to be and how it differs from the others. And I thought they did a good job with that, because it's usually a pet peeve of mine.
I suspect that might tie back into something that I think was mentioned in chat as well, which is just the fact that this world is so lived in. Like, you'll get to these parts and you'll see, you know, whether it's corpses or houses or just kind of statues or things that tell the background of little areas, it's it's just a great way of setting up the importance of pieces of things. So,
Yeah.
for example, there's this place you fight this boss called the Traitor Lord, and then you explore and you get to this little scene where there's 3 or 4 dead infected bugs and one dead like knight, and then inside that knight is right next to a building, and inside that building you talk to somebody and they give you a collectible, and it's that that sticks out so much more in my head because there's this immediate story being told of this kind of tucked away place where a battle clearly happened and somebody was protected from the infection, and that just ties it into a grounded like world that makes all these bits and pieces so much more important.
Yeah, Isma's Tear is another example of that for me.
Yes.
Like there are so many other things like I never got far enough in the story to really learn much about Hornet, so I still mostly call her Red Dress Hollow Knight.
Yeah, I called her Needle by mistake for the first 30 hours of this game.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas like Isma's Tear isn't just acid immunity idol to me.
Yes, exactly.
It's Isma's Tear, and it's because they built that little story of like Dung Defender defending her, and I found the entrance to the tier place before I found Dung Defender, so I was looking for him, and like I think you're right. It elevates your memory and the way you interact with these things, when there's those stories.
Like as an example, can you remember what the double jump is called or what the wall jump is called? No, of course you fucking can't.
But I remember the wall jump's the Mantis Claws because of Mantis Village.
Fair enough. I couldn't have remembered that one until I was like 30 or 40 hours in. But Isma's Tear is the one upgrade I can actually genuinely remember the name of very easily.
Which is weird because
it's so strongly tied in.
It's far from the biggest one.
No, it's actually probably one of the least important upgrades that you can get.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It just is, they just build this world so well. Yeah, we'll talk about this more, I think, as we continue, because it ties into everything, how strong the world is here.
Oh, Monarch Wings. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I know it now is the Monarch Wings because I've been playing this game for 40 hours. But when I was like 15 hours in, I'm like, I don't know, whatever, right? Like it's the double jump.
I definitely refer to it as the double jump.
Yeah, it's the dash. It's not the shade cloak. It's the dark dash. I still call it the dark dash.
Anyway. Yeah. Okay, so for the next slide, I just wanted to bring up something, and we sort of touched on this already, but something I think this game does a great job of is not telling you how to play in a real pushy way. Like, sometimes you get games that you can tell what the right strategy is meant to be that the devs had in mind. I think Hollow Knight does a great job of giving you, and like we've got the image of all the charms up here, because they're kind of an embodiment of that. Like they let you customize how you play, but also like all the enemy variety and boss variety that we've already sort of touched on. Some of those enemies like will require you to stay back or go forward. Like I'm someone who tends to stand next to an enemy and just mash my nail until they're dead. And there were definitely some bosses where I died very quickly 3 times in a row because that is not what you were meant to do with that boss, and it took me a while to get the message. But it never felt like, I guess the game has that variety, so when it forces you to play like that for a boss, it doesn't feel like it's being pushy or asking too much, because it's like, okay, for this boss I need to step back. It's not the game telling me to play the whole game properly, you're meant to play it this way. It just does it on and off. It's part of the variety. It's kind of forcing you not to be in a rut. It's forcing you to change your pace.
There's an old talk I remember watching. I think it was Valve. I can't quite remember, but based around the concept of even when a player dies, how do you make that feel satisfying? And the key idea is if a player has all the key information and they can see, okay, I died, but it's because of a decision I made, and this was the decision, and I can see the cause for my death. It doesn't feel, rather than feeling like a setback, as long as you're not set back too much, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like this is an opportunity for me to practice and get better. And Hollow Knight is so good at that because it lets you see what's coming, lets you adjust to playstyle to think, oh, okay, when he does that move, I might need to jump up and do a pogo, or, oh, he has a bunch of these, times to heal, so maybe I should get like the quick focus or the deep focus to heal up more or something like that. And it really lets you adjust your style in a meaningful way for these different bosses.
Yeah, well, it's that combat puzzle
Yeah.
stuff that we've already been talking about. Really, like it's the fact that 90% of the time when I died to a boss, I got new information in that fight.
Yes.
I would die, but I'd be like, okay, well, but I lost 3 health because he pulled out this new move I didn't see the first time, and
Yeah.
that ruined me. But now I know when he leans down, I've got to start jumping because otherwise he's going to charge me.
Yeah, or you do. I was when I got to some of these bosses, I would start experimenting. Like, oh, okay, when he does this move, should I try and pogo or dash through him? Like, which is better? And I'd experiment, and maybe I'd die, but I'd be like, okay, so it's not that. Strike that out. Let's experiment again, and we'll try a different way and see what seems to be the most consistent.
I think my only issue with that with some bosses, Soul Master was probably the first boss I had real trouble with, and the trek back up to where Soul Master is was so long. It was
Yeah,
taking me a good 5 to 10 minutes every time, and I had to do it about 4 or 5 times.
yeah.
So that was a bit of a pain in the ass. But I mean that would actually be maybe one of my other criticisms of this game, and I know this will probably be a controversial thing to say, but I think there should have just been fast travel between all the benches, or benches should have been placed to make it easier to get to things. Like the nailsmith is a particular example that grated on me because it was like a 5 to 10 minute round trip every time you wanted to visit the nailsmith.
Yeah, you got to go to the king's storerooms.
Yeah,
And
you had
then
to go to the storerooms, and then it was so far, and I was like, just put him next to a tram station or some sort of fast travel thing because I don't think it adds anything to the game to force me to walk 10 minutes over enemies I've killed a dozen times already.
Yeah.
Just to get an upgrade and then go straight back.
Did you one that was right next to a train station was the banker? Did you end up
Yeah.
using the bank much?
I put like 150 when I first got there, and then I kept meaning to go back, and I never did. Which is like a shame because there were a couple of times where I lost like 1,000 geo or something. So I wish I had been using it more.
Yeah, my advice to you would be put all your geo in the bank. It's just a safe way to store it.
Well, yeah, because you're not going to lose it when you die.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I assume.
Yeah. Should we talk about? Let's play the next clip. I want to see if you can spot what I want to talk about in this clip.
Okay, sound on?
Yeah. I don't remember actually. Let's find out. Oh my god.
Is this
Okay. Oh wait, no, this isn't the right clip. Wait. Hold on. Where's the clip?
No, yeah, we've put the wrong clip in that slide.
Hold on. Is it in a different slide? No. All right, just give me a second. I'll pop it in. Stay tuned, folks.
I'm just catching up on the chat. People are naming a lot of stuff. I'm terrible at the names with this thing. Like, I keep referring to Crystal Heart as the big zoom.
Yeah, I call it the super jump. I mean, that's the thing. What we're talking about with Isma's Tier, right? Like, it's so well themed that you just remember the name of it.
I think part of the problem with Crystal Heart is it's very similar to that Metroid charge attack. So that's why I couldn't think of it as its own thing, because as soon as I got it, I was like, oh, it's like that the charge attack in Metroid.
Oh, here's a question for you, Elliot. Did you ever use any... Well, first, did you find any of the nail arts?
What are the nail arts?
Yeah, cool. Like the special charged attacks.
Yeah, I had 3 of those.
Did you ever use them? I don't think I used them once.
That was the only way I could kill some of those spider guys in Deep Nest. I don't know
that's a good idea.
I don't know how you actually meant to kill them. I was taking so much damage before I learnt to do that.
Yeah. Good trick. I never used them.
Oh, and I used them a lot on the Watcher Nights.
Oh yeah. Fair enough. All right, cool. Let's watch this video, shall we?
Yep.
Welcome to freedom. You can thank me later.
All right. Did you see it, Elliot? Did you catch it?
No.
Did you catch it? Let's watch it again. Let's watch it again.
I am here to help. Welcome to freedom. You can thank me later.
What about that time?
What, like your little dance after you freed him?
Yes, the little dance. I want to talk about this little dance because it represents to me something that's so cool in Hollow Knight. I'm talking about the movement of the game here. The fact that this game feels so good to control, maybe at the start of the game less so, but as you start to getting these movement options, you really start to feel so in control, and it's so tight, the controls, that I started having these moments where I would like naturally be emoting through the game, just doing like a little happy dance when I rescued a worm or something. And someone pointed it out to me in chat, and I was just like, That's such a marker of how strong these controls are, that you feel so in control that doing these little tiny dances are just like a natural way of expressing yourself in the game outside of like moving around. You just kind of are embodying the game. It's so great.
Yeah. Because uh, outside of Hollow Knight, I think one of the only 2D platformers I've really put any time into in like the last 10 years has been Mario Maker. And comparatively, Mario is very slippery.
Yeah.
So for the first like 30 minutes of Hollow Knight, I was a fucking mess because I kept overcorrecting everything. But then like I think a testament to how polished the controls are is that like, you know, they overrode like basically 10 years of programming in about half an hour.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, you're right. Like after that, like the platforming that I was doing actually quite easily, even towards the end of the game, that should have been quite hard, just because it was very rare that I moved somewhere I didn't want to.
Yes. Yeah. I felt, again, it comes back to this idea of when you die, it should feel like it's at your own fault and for your own knowledge.
Yeah.
I never felt like I was messing up jumps because of the controls. It was just
it was me. Yeah, it was me not pushing it in time. It was never, oh,
Yeah.
this game's jank.
I want to call out another example that in chat Nicola Pietro did, which I started noticing myself doing as well. When you beat the nail art masters, you can fight them as bosses later on. They bow to you after you beat them, and if you hold down, as in to look down, but you're in an arena where you can't look down, your character will just do a little look down kind of bow. And I found myself doing the exact same thing that Nick points out, where they like bow back to enemies that bow to them, just as a natural way of expressing their movement. It's so great that Hollow Knight, like, it's not necessarily designed to let you do that, but you just have such tight control over it that you want to, like express yourself with it. It's incredible. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. People are now chatting about whether keyboard or controller is better, so maybe we should move on.
Start a flame war. This is another one of your ones, Ruben.
Yeah, play it. Just play it. Let's hear it. One down. What? Oh, what? 3 Mantis Lords? Oh my god, this is so cool. This is awesome. This is everything I've ever wanted. This is so cool. You guys are awesome. This is awesome, and I love it. The thing I wanted to talk about here is just how great these boss fights are. This boss fight is so good.
It's like, because like I haven't gotten up to this one, but like I was actually watching Dawn go through it, our mod earlier today, and it's like it starts off with just the 1, and you get a feel for it, and then it just goes up to 3, and that completely changes the way you have to do the fight.
Well, because when you first do this fight, it's 1 and then 2. You fight 1 and then the other 2 at the same time. And then suddenly, for this version, you fight all 3 of them, and it's just out of nowhere, and it's an escalation. And it is a great way of showing these boss fights are all just so much fun. Like, genuinely, I found myself having so much fun on every single boss fight, except for the Soul Tyrant, who's a piece of shit. They're all so fun.
And again, like I guess we've already touched on this a bit, but just the variety. Like some would encourage you to go in and smash them as much as you can.
Yes.
Others force you to go back and jump around. Like the first and second fight against Hornet, I just got absolutely smashed because I kept trying to charge her, and it just never worked for me. And I had to learn to anticipate where she was going to go in her attack and use that like opportunity window, which is not usually the way I play.
Yes.
And so like it's so fun the way every boss, it almost feels like they picked something they wanted you to have to focus on and work that around for the whole boss. Maybe the one exception being the Watcher Knights, where they just decided to drown you.
No, I love the Watcher Knights. The Watcher Knights were one that I found so difficult the first time I played them. But once they kind of clicked for me, I find them a really fun boss because they're challenging, but also a bit chaotic. Like the bosses where something's slightly chaotic, but also it got some good patterns. It's so good.
Yeah, you do need that twinge of randomness in there because otherwise it becomes too predictable, and then it's
Yeah.
just like then you can make a bot do it. Like you need that little bit of randomness, so you still have to make decisions on the fly.
Yeah, people are talking about the Nightmare King Grimm as well, who is a great example of this, who I don't think you've seen yet, Elliot. But another example of a boss that's hard but has reliable patterns, reliable opportunities to attack them, but also a few chaotic things where you don't ever feel like you fully understand them. You just kind of have to, they have this one pattern where they rain down fire from above. And it's this moment of you can do your best to dodge it and you kind of 80% know where it's going to land, but you have to kind of react very quickly to it. It's great.
Yeah. I also think like this style of very unique boss fights is super important to the game because it's linear-esque, the game, up until you get to the bit where you get to the resting grounds, and then you've suddenly got the three dreamers that you need to awaken, right?
Yes.
And that's definitely the point where it's just kind of like, okay, the rest of the world is yours. And
Yeah.
the thing is, each one of those dreamers not just requires like a sort of different path to get to unlock them, but the sort of confrontation against all of them relies on a totally different aspect of the gameplay. And what that means is you can do them in any order and it doesn't like quite matter, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like saving up the Watcher Knights, to get to the Watcher last, you're not directly getting more powerful because you've done the other ones, if that makes sense, because they focus on different things. So it means that the difficulty of all three can kind of feel the same, and you're not going to go back to one later and just be completely overpowered because you did the other two first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're relying on different skills, which you haven't been leveling up, even if you've got the new abilities.
I mean, the closest you get is you get nail upgrades and you get upgrades to some of your spells. And that's basically the only straight upgrades you get, other than charms that kind of tweak the way that you can play.
Yeah, like I ended up saving the Watcher Knights for last just because I went and got all the nail upgrades because I was like, I tried to fight them like 3 times and just got absolutely smoked.
Yeah, they can be tough.
and so then I was like, okay, I'm going to go do the other two Dreamers. And it's like, there was nothing in the other two Dreamers that directly prepared me for the Watcher Knights. And there's nothing getting to the Watcher Knights that directly prepared me for Deep Nest or like Fog Canyon.
Yeah.
Like they all rely on completely different things. And I think because there are definitely other games I've played that do that, where it's sort of like, you can go to these 3 areas and whichever one you go to last, you just sort of steamroll through because you're over leveled.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I didn't quite feel that in Hollow Knight because they were relying on different aspects of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is a masterstroke in a kind of open worldy content. I mean, not open world, Metroidvania version of open world.
Yeah, actually, it's Breath of the Wild, which is my go-to open world game, is a great example of that. Like, whichever one of those 4, I forget what they call the dungeons in that game, like whichever one of those you do last, you just kind of cruise through.
Yeah,
because you know exactly what's up and you're
exactly.
and you're overpowered. In Hollow Knight, I'd be interested if there's any sort of trend as to whether which order people do them in, and whether they felt like it got easier as they went.
Yeah, the thing is, like, it's not as brutish of a way of gating content or like kind of sequencing things by just like making the first one you do have 1/3 of the health, the second one have 2/3, the third one have 3/3 or whatever. Like, a programmatic way of scaling them. It actually is, they're just different. Like they're just different styles. And so any easier they are is just because you've kind of gotten the hang of movement more, and that's really it.
Yeah, it'll be like other upgrades or charms you've gotten just through playing more and that other stuff. But like, yeah, you're right. There's not that sense of what's coming either. Like, I definitely had this vision in my head of there will be 3 boss fights against each of the Dreamers. And when I got to the first one, it was so not what I expected. And then when I got to the second one, it was like, this is also completely different. Like, what is going on? I thought that was really unique and just like a cool bit of game design. Like, if I was ever to make an open world game now, I would try and copy this strategy of saying, okay, if the player gets to a point where they've got a 4-way option, I need to make each one of those 4 rely on a completely different mechanic so that they're not too OP when they get to the later ones.
Yeah. What a game. Love it. Yeah. The moment when the first one I found was the one in um, what's the spooky insect place called? The
You're gonna have
depths.
to be more specific
You
than
know the one
spooky
with all the
insect
fucking
place. That's
spiders.
like four.
With all the
That's like the whole
spiders,
map.
Elliot.
Deep Nest.
Deep Nest, that's it. The first one I found was the one in Deep Nest. I think it's the Dreamer or the Mother. I can't remember the name of it. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to fight this. And you dream nail them, and you're like, all right, what's going on? And you walk up to them, and they're standing there like a boss would stand there.
You just whack them.
And then you just whack them, and I'm like, oh, this isn't good. What's going? Like,
yeah,
this is terrible.
I was so ready for the shit to hit the fan. I did that one first as well, and I did the same. I started tentatively hitting them, and I was like, the shit is going to hit the fan at any second.
Yeah.
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 Now, let's go on to something that I'm very interested to hear from the audience on.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about like permanent consequences. So what we have here is the first time, as you can see, I'm about to make my way to Queen Station for the first time. I've lost my vessel, and it has all 1,400 of my geo in it.
Oh, I can't.
You can see the pause where I'm like, fuck this.
Rough.
Yep. So that, so I think I took about a 45-minute break and just started bitching about how much I hated the game on Discord at that point. But I'm interested what people's impression of permanent consequences are, because I obviously was very mad the first time I lost all my geo, and it raises the stakes. And by the end, I wasn't as upset as I was losing geo, but I'm interested if people think it's a good incentive or not.
I have this interesting reaction where I not to brag, but I never lost I never lost any geo.
Okay, well then, I'm asking the audience.
Like I didn't feel like I ever got to a point where my soul was in a situation.
Just to address the chat, yes, it was a very stupid death. I thought I was going to dodge them. Yeah, it was absolutely my own fault. I was trying to rush and gather soul, and that was what made me so angry, is that it was a really stupid death.
Yeah. I didn't feel like I was ever put in a situation by the game where I couldn't collect my soul again if I like applied myself, you know? I would have a lot of times where I would die, get back to where my soul was, collect it, and then die in the same spot immediately. And so I would kind of get stuck for a bit. Maybe the solution to this for the game would have been to let you know that you can actually call your soul back to you from Dirtmouth, which was something that I didn't know you could do until someone told me.
I found that and then never used it once, because I was always confident I could get back. And so that clip there was one of the 2 times I lost all my geo, and both times again it was like stupid deaths. Like, I agree with you. I never felt like I couldn't get back to my shade. The 2 times I failed to was it was my fault.
Yeah.
But it was obviously frustrating because I lost all the geo.
I do love the fact that it's not collectibles that you lose. Like, you would never lose an artifact if you die.
Yeah.
You don't lose map progress. The one thing you lose is your Patamas geo, and that's like, you can just get, like, that's just the currency that you get as you play anyway. Like, is a consequence, and it feels consequential, but it's not so punishing to be, oh, you've lost any tangible progress that you've made.
To your point about like the game teaching you this mechanic, I do think that is maybe one of the bits where the lack of forced tutorials in the game comes in, because we had one of our patrons, Bird, I think went through about 3/4 of the game before finding out you could go and get your shade. They just assumed all their geo was lost every time they died. Yeah. So they lost like, they reckon like 10 to 15k of geo just because they didn't realize that they could go and get it. So like, I do think some of the stuff around the shade maybe isn't clear. Like, I was very unsure how the losing geo was going to work, but like again, I'm just interested to farm opinions on permanent consequences and whether they're like, it's a good way of raising the stakes or whether it's just frustrating. I guess we're coming into whether games are an escapism or like something you should be challenging yourself with.
Yeah, and I think that is a debate that goes in a lot of weird directions.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it just does come down to like games as a medium are going to be received as any art is. It's going to be received differently by different people, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you kind of have to. It's a weird thing where you kind of have to pick. Okay, what do I think the average experience is? What do I think the average skill of a player is? What do I want the average person to face? And try and build your systems around punishing that player in a healthy way, and just hope that it's works for everyone else, or offer maybe Celeste style difficulty options that let you really for your accessibility.
I think Celeste strikes a good balance there. You're right. That is a really good example of sort of saying the default is hard mode, and then sort of giving casuals like me a bit of an out and saying, hey, just have fun. Like, yeah.
To contrast it, I really hate the Dark Souls games because I felt like they are too punishing just for the sake of being punishing. They're not there to be a game that's enjoyed. They're there to be a thing that you kind of eventually learn and beat, and that's the reason right? It is just a weird scale of you kind of have to figure out different people's tastes are going to align to this in different ways, and I don't think there's going to be a good answer.
Yeah. No, it's tricky. I don't know. Like it's weird. It grew on me. I think this is maybe one of the first games I've played that had real permanent stakes, which was why my reaction was so visceral when it happened in that clip. But it was growing on me now. I think it's important that there were consequences that set me back, but not too far. I think Hollow Knight did a good job. Like when I lost Geo, it's like, fuck, that's going to take me. Now I can't buy maps or whatever. But I can get the Geo eventually, as long as there's more Geo. It's only a temporary setback.
Geo is something that you just are getting passively as you go. Right? You get the Gathering Swarm charm, and you're just like, oh, I'm just getting Geo all the time now.
That was one of my favorite charms. I was using that all the time.
It's nice. So we're about to get into some heavy spoilers because we're about to talk about some story stuff.
Yes.
The end of the game story specifically, and the overall story of the game. So get ready.
Yes. Do you want me to play the clip?
Yeah, this clip is just the end of the game. It just kind of sets up some of the story stuff. I think, yeah, let's play it and then go from there.
I freaked out the first time he started stabbing himself like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess... Well, do you want to talk about your thoughts on the story first?
Yes, because I'm not anywhere near far through it as you. So I defeated Hollow Knight for the first time, like late last night. Which, fun fact, that was when I learned that the main character's name isn't Hollow Knight. I actually thought we were the Hollow Knight the whole time. Oh, this is different to... Yeah, this is different to how it went for me.
Yes, I captured this last night, and I'm at 112%, so some things are different about the final fight.
Yeah, okay, clearly. Yeah, so the story... Oh, I'll wait for the video to finish. The music's so good, though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so... I guess to go over the story, I mean, I definitely feel like I'm at the point where I do not have the whole picture. And part of that is my own fault because I think I played way too much of this game in a rush to finish it for Game Club because I didn't manage my time very well. So I defeated Hollow Knight and replaced him in the ending that I got. Because there's more than one ending. And... yeah, I'm like, I don't really understand why I needed to replace him, what I'm actually replacing him to do. It seems to be holding some sort of infection in, but like, I'm very unclear on what the story actually is at this point.
Yeah, the thing I love about this game is you basically learn over the course of playing, you'll pretty much every player, I think, will learn the key facts of the story, which are there's an infection, it's obviously bad, there's the Hollow Knight who was there to kind of contain it, that's somewhat starting to fail, and you end up replacing them to seal it again, right?
Yes, and people were fighting me to make sure I was strong enough to actually seal it properly.
Yes. Yes.
Because it's kind of like opening it up is, going to be bad times if you don't defeat him. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the basics of the story. And that's all you really need to know. And the rest of the game, and the thing I love about it is the rest of it is all just there for you to optionally explore depending on how much you want to. And a lot of the ways that will unravel is you'll basically just talk to somebody and they'll say one or two lines, and it'll just click for you. You'll have this eureka moment of, oh shit, well that's this thing. Like this is that thing. And it's so up to you, in the same way the mechanics are up to you to find and all this other stuff. It's so up to you about like how much do you actually want to engage with the story. I got to the point after I beat Hollow Knight for the first time where I was like, okay, well I know the basics of the story, but I don't understand like this or this or this or this.
Yeah. I don't know who Hornet is or why she gives a shit about what's going on.
But that's all there. Like, do you want me to? I could tell you the full backstory for Hornet because you talk to like 3 or 4 different NPCs and you just learn about Hornet. Like,
yeah, okay.
It's wild the amount that exists, and it's so
well because like a good game with a story will have some sort of environmental storytelling. Like it's a bit of a gimme these days, especially.
Yeah.
But I've never seen it to this degree where it's like the actual main plot. Like usually it's supplementary materials.
Yes.
Like you get all the the cutscenes and stuff cover the main plot of the game, and then the journals you're picking up in the corners of the world explain more of the backstory of the world, and it's basically like rewarding you for exploring with extra story.
Yeah.
Hollow Knight, it's the core part of the story that's in the background there. Like the actual cutscenes, like the bit for me where you meet Hornet at the fountain and she shows you the statue of the Hollow Knight.
Yeah.
And then it's just kind of like, okay. And then there's 3 dreamers, I guess, that I got to go. Oh no, I think she just told me about the Black Egg Temple again.
Yes.
But it was just kind of, I was just like, I have no idea why she's telling me this or what I meant to do there. And so I kind of went there and there was nothing to do yet. And then you're right. Like you keep exploring and you learn more of the pieces, but I've never seen it to this degree where they just don't even tell you the story unless you go looking for it.
That's the thing I love though, right? Like
it's pretty good.
You play through and you get to a place called the Ancient Basin. And when you go there, there's a bunch of skeletons of you, right? Like other versions of you.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of souls. Like when you die, you leave behind your wraith, these enemies that you kill. And they're called siblings in the Hunter's Journal, which again is just a great way of just like a little tiny tidbit of lore that you're left to put together for yourself. Like, wait, what? What's going on? Like, these are my siblings, the ghosts of my siblings. And it forces you to start making these connections. I love it.
So the only reason I had to tie to that is because I accidentally overshot the exit to the abyss as I was climbing out, and Hornet was at the top. And she was like, "Oh, I see you've come down to your birthplace," and I was like, "I'm from here," because I was like, I noticed there was shit that looks like me, but okay, righto, yeah.
No, I love it. Finding out who you are as a character, finding out more about the Hollow Knight, about Hornet, about the King, about all this stuff. It's just like there's a lot of stuff there. I want to touch on as well the tone of this game, because it's very like you're an explorer, right, to start the game, and you're there to like, I mean, you don't fully know what you're there to do, but you just kind of dive in and you start kind of kicking bugs and bug butts and taking names, right? And then you get to these specific points where it's just revealed how tragic this game is. Yeah. Like when you fight the Beast is the name of
because
one of the dreamers.
It's a bit framed when you first get to Dirtmouth as like, people are like, oh, adventurers often come here looking to explore the caverns. And so it's framed at the start as like, I'm an adventurer just looking for trouble. And you sort of go in and then it's suddenly like, this place is really tragic. And also I'm tied into that somehow.
Yes, it kind of leverages the like background context to any video game where you're playing as an adventurer that just goes around killing monsters for the fun of it. And then you have these moments where you fight the Beast, one of the dreamers, who it was the first one I fought. And so to me, that's the moment of me going, oh shit, like I'm just killing this thing. And it's kind of like accepting its fate and telling me to do that and encouraging me. what the fuck is this? And then the part in this clip where the Hollow Knight starts stabbing itself in the middle of this final boss fight, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, it turns this like adventuring tone into a tragedy. And I love the Hollow Knight part, because when he first stabs himself, genuinely, it's just like, oh fuck, this is really bad. Like, what that implies is he's still somewhat sentient in there and is trying to kill himself. Like,
well, that's like my first thought when it happened in the battle. Is it was like, oh god, how is this going to hurt me? And then I realized he was just hurting himself. And like, because I think we talked about this a little bit before we went on the air, but like, because I was like, I came a little underwhelmed out of the Hollow Knight fight itself. And you sort of told me that it isn't quite the final boss fight that I thought.
Well, it's the first final boss fight.
Yeah, exactly. So that explains that. And it's like, and like, with that in mind, like, you know, if we were having this conversation after I'd played more, I probably would have made this like, you know, without needing that tidbit. But
yeah,
it's like, this fight doesn't feel like a victory when you win it.
No,
like the first time.
Actually,
and because like, he gets weaker. Like, that's the thing. There's like 2 to 3 phases to this fight. And the Hollow Knight gets weaker and starts stabbing himself during it. And it's sort of like...
And you get this really sad music with these strings. Like, yeah, it's wild. I when I started playing this, I was playing it on stream. And I intended to play it and get to the final boss. I was saying to myself, like, okay, I know there's a lot of content in this game. I'm not going to complete it all. Like, I'll play it, I'll have fun, I'll get to the ending, I'll finish it for the first time, and then I'll put it down. And the ending is just... it makes you want to learn more. It's so weird, because it's an ending to the game and a totally valid place to stop if you do stop there, you know, you're 20 hours in or something, and you think, no, I can't leave it there. Like, I need to do more. I can't just leave that being the end of this story. And that's so powerful. Like, it's really masterfully done, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah, I guess to go back to what we were talking about before, like overall talking about like how in the background the entire story for Hollow Knight is. And I see a lot of people in the comments comparing it to Dark Souls, but I haven't played those. But like, you know, if it is sort of the same, it's interesting how I wonder if this happens in Dark Souls. There are definitely times where I feel like Hollow Knight gave me most of the information towards the end. So for a lot of it, like, as I was chasing the 3 dreamers at the start, I was like, I don't really have any idea why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm just doing it because the game told me to.
You're doing it because it's a video game.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so that would maybe be my one criticism, is like maybe a bit more needed to be front-loaded or explicitly told to us, so I felt like I knew why I wanted to free these guys. Because at the time I was just sort of like, I don't know, it seems risky to let this Hollow Knight out. I say we just leave him in there and I'll just loot some Geo and then go to the next kingdom. Yeah,
I think the one part of the story which didn't come across strongly enough to me was the thing that they had done to contain the infection wasn't good enough. Like, the infection was clearly escaping, and you can kind of figure that out if you sit and think about it. Like, oh yeah,
but that was one of the 3 things I did understand. So that's like that's a thing to how divergent these paths can be, because there are other big things I was missing compared to you based on our conversation before. But that was one of the few things I'd gotten, is that it was leaking, and that was why there was a time limit.
Okay, well, you know, maybe I don't know.
Yeah. That's just, again, that's a bit of a risk with telling your entire story in the background. Is there are bits some people are going to miss, and other bits other people aren't.
Yeah. If it's all dialogue that you get from dream nailing some certain characters that you don't even have to talk to, you know, like.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of characters, should we play the next clip?
Yep.
This one definitely needs sound.
Alright, I'm taking note of this timestamp.
What a like meaningless NPC that just left such an impression on me.
Yeah. Mila is incredible. I think she's a great example. I think Cornifer is the other good example. And I don't know her name, Barpanada. Whatever.
Cornifer's wife.
Yes, Cornifer's wife. Because the they do so much. Like these NPCs are like very slim in terms of dialogue and stuff, right? There's like what 8 lines of dialogue for Mila, Cornifer, same, Barpanata, the same situation. But they Iselda, that's the name. Thank you, Sith Spawn. They do so much to make you connect to them in such a short amount of time. For Mila, this is an NPC that stuck with me for the entire game, just because she was humming a little song to herself as she stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Like I could instantly go and find her if I needed to, and like she has like a lot of the others, like Quirrell, I didn't really piece together until I met him for like the 3rd time.
Yeah.
Whereas Mila, like at least as far as I'm aware, you only see her the once. It's just mine and I think, and it's just like it's amazing how just the room was built to make me remember her.
And just the little humming, like same with Cornifer where he hums and you find him, and same with the voice lines like of Iselda where she says, Barpanata, and it's just so immediately relatable, even though it's nonsense. Or one that I really liked is the Dung Defender who just says things like, yeah, and just like random nonsense, and you just love them. You just fall in love with them immediately. And I think it's just the strength of the voice work in this, even though it's pure nonsense.
Dung Defender was just the one where they just decided to stop being serious, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Like of all the bosses, I thought Dung Defender was just one where they just like, let's just get real weird with it. And have a
Zote is another good example, isn't he?
Yes, in fact, in the notes here, I just have written Zote.
And you haven't even got to the best Zote bits yet, Elliot. You've got a lot more Zote to come across.
I've saved him in a few places, and he was, of course, very thankful for my service. But I fought him in the Colosseum late last night, and that was the best. Like, because he's just like, I actually got super worried because of all the build up. It was perfect comedy the way they were like, boom, boom, and I was expecting this big boss, and then Zote dropped down, and I was like, oh shit, it's gonna be real, and then he comes at you like waggling the sword. It's so good. I was cackling as I just beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, people are now just quoting lines like Dung Defenders. Oh, dum 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 just a classic. It's just you just fall in love with them so quickly, and that, again, a testament to just how strong the writing and the atmosphere is in these games, right? It's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how just into the world you get.
Yeah. What a wonderful game it is. What a wonderful game this was. What a great first game to talk about.
Yeah, I'm so glad everyone pushed us to do this one. I've owned it for years and just never got around to playing it. And
me too.
I'm glad everyone fixed that. And I hope everyone else who played it for this club had as good a time as we did, because it was great.
Yeah, I can't believe I've been in the Australian game dev scene for so long and have never played Hollow Knight. It's actually a tragedy. What a brilliant game.
And so now we move on to the discussion question, which we actually forgot to properly announce in Patreon. So it's a bit of an accidentally Discord exclusive today.
Yep.
We're going to be announcing the one for the next month soon. So hopefully we'll get more submissions.
Yep.
But to just start going through it, we got our first answer from Kirkistan. And so the discussion question was, what is your favorite thing about a Metroidvania?
Yeah.
And Kirkistan talked about like just being a fan of like meticulous game design, which I do agree. I think Metroidvanias are probably one of the best examples of that in a way. Like it's interesting how it feels more meticulous than, say, like even a really good 2D platformer, like, you know, like a Celeste or something.
Yeah.
Obviously, all the levels are so perfectly crafted, but there's something about a Metroidvania and the way it's that, but also it all fits together is just really, really fun. Yeah.
The design process for Metroidvanias is you build these little platforming challenges or little, interactions, right, where you're fighting through a few enemies, and then you just start connecting these pieces, and you start fleshing them out with like life and joy. And so a lot of the Metroidvania design experience is you're starting to build just little bits and pieces of rich, detail into your challenges, and it's just so compelling every time.
Yeah, Kyrgyzstan also sort of touched on some of that stuff we talked about, where you've got like, new abilities versus your own skill getting better. And the way a Metroidvania will, by forcing you to backtrack, make you feel like you've gotten better beyond just being more powerful.
Yeah, because at the core, a lot of games, I could almost say, I think all games are stories of you as a character getting stronger as you progress through them. Yeah. And Metroidvanias have the purest distillation of allowing you to assess and recognize that when you are tracking through other areas where you just like had so much trouble before, and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, this is just one of those things. I can take that out, no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's beautiful. We had an answer from Professor Deadpool from Prof, who said, actually, an interesting answer. Their favorite part is kind of comparing paths and ways of solving the games, which kind of ties into the idea that this is a big open world. And it's so much fun to talk about, oh, you went to Teacher's Archives first? I went over to, Deepness first and did this, and this is my experience. Oh, this is my experience. And comparing, like, the way that different people interpreted them.
I mean, I think we've been doing a bit of that in this discussion today as proof to that statement, yeah.
And it's so much fun to learn about the different... In a game like Hollow Knight, especially where so much of the story is kind of told back in the background, and if you learn to keep watch for the name Ogrim before you fight the Dung Defender, that'll kind of twig in your mind a bit more. And so taking different paths actually means that you get different pieces of lore. Yeah. And so talking with other people about the game, it's such a great way to learn new things that you kind of overlooked or didn't quite catch in your playthrough.
Yeah, well, like, we've talked so much about how things like Isma's Tear, like, sticks with you, and that's going to be different for every person because of the way they get to it. Depending on what lore they have on their own path to getting to it, it's going to affect how much it hits them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, 100%. It's great.
Yeah. And then our last answer was from Coinage, who just talked again about that sort of accomplishment you get as you get better and you beat more and more difficult things. Like it's sort of, the difficulty curve in a Metroidvania is very visible compared to some other types of games.
Yeah, and even it's kind of self-selected, right? Like you choose the curve in the way you want to engage with it. I remember I had an experience where the first time I went to Deep Nest, I walked in and I saw some of those weird, like, spidery shredder things in the ground. And I was like, and I heard the skittering and chittering in Deep Nest. And I was like, nope, I'm leaving this for later. And so I just completely decided, no, I'll come back to this later. I think I had everything I needed to fully explore it, but I just decided, no, I'm not ready for this yet. Yeah. And so you kind of select your own difficulty curve in the way you engage with this, which allows it to tailor itself a lot more to different kind of players in a really intuitive way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's one of those benefits of having those branching paths is, people don't necessarily get stuck on one thing.
Yeah.
The one exception being, the moments where we both got stuck because there was really only one way to go.
Well, for me, it was never quite that there was one way to go. It was, I want to finish exploring this and I know I can. And so I would just brute force my way through it, even when I had like one or two other threads that I could have gone and plucked at,
Yeah, same. I definitely got stuck in some bits, just like, no, fuck it, I'm doing this now.
Yeah. It really does seem like a lot of people engage with Hollow Knight in a lot of different and very interesting ways. So I think it was a great game to start with. I think the one problem with starting with this game is it's such a high bar to set for all our future game clubs. So yeah, we'll see.
We'll try and keep it up. I mean, I think like any good game has a lot to it, and like Hollow Knight is one of those ones. Like, I am much more about the exploring than the combat. I'm probably not going to do the things I was seeing in the late game where it's just like boss rush type modes, because I don't enjoy that as much. I'll probably finish exploring the map and then call it a day. But like other people, I've seen people sharing stuff in the Discord and they're doing frankly insane shit to the bosses that like scares me. I think it's a really good testament to a game where there's so many different mechanics that everyone could find their own part of it to invest themselves in.
I've played more of this game after I finished the first boss than beforehand. which is insane to me.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
after I finished the final boss.
yeah.
After I beat Hollow Knight, I'd played 18 hours, and now I still haven't finished the game, but I've played 40 hours. I've played more time after the end of the game than beforehand, which is fucking crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. There's just so much good stuff in there. Yeah. I mean, this is a chance. We've just got kind of this open time for people to bring up things that they want to talk about the game. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion in chat about things already, and we've jumped into some of these. But if anyone has any other bits and pieces that they want to talk about, anything else that they really loved about Hollow Knight, now's your best chance.
I think there's a bit of a delay, so we'll be sitting
Yeah,
here
what
for
are
a
your
few
final
seconds.
what are your final wrap up thoughts for Hollow Knight?
I mean, I loved it. It's probably not the sort of game I'd usually play, which is why I'm really glad that we did.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, like I'm just keen to play more of it. I didn't get to play anywhere near enough for this session today, and I'll just be playing some more in my own time after this.
Yeah. We're getting some comments to talk about the soundtrack. Have you got your favorite song, Elliot? What place is your favorite song?
Whew, that's a good question. Sorry.
Green Path.
Yeah, Green Path is
I love
definitely a strong candidate. Yeah, I don't know. I almost more than the actual soundtrack, I found myself enraptured with like the rest of the audio design, like the sound effects. I thought the spatialization was incredibly good for a 2D game. Like I could almost tell what direction Cornifer was in when I could hear him.
Yes.
Or like just the rest of the sound design is very good.
Yeah, I think people are calling out the City of Tears, especially, is another great
Yep.
place for sound. And
That's so
like
cinematic when you first get there and you get to that bit looking out like with the window and the rain. Oh, it's so good.
Again, like I hate it, but Deep Nest, the soundscape there is so consistently terrifying. It's pretty great.
That place is nightmare fuel for sure. Like, and you're right. Like, it's that consistent quality of art and sound design that just really put the vibes of each place so strongly in your head.
Yeah.
Like compare it to say Kingdom's Edge, which is just kind of melancholy, I guess would be the word I'd use to describe Kingdom's Edge. Like with all the dead worm shedding going on, which I still don't fully understand what that was, but it seems like a big deal. Like, you know, there's so much happening there, but it's still like just the vibe of each location is so strong.
I love there's this part when you're climbing up to the Colosseum of Fools, if you approach it from below, which I think is the first way that you usually would get there.
Yeah.
Climbing up, bodies are falling from the Colosseum.
Yes.
It's fucking powerful. The fact that as you climb, you just see bodies fall past every so often, and you're like, what the fuck? Up to the top, crazy Colosseum, you're like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, and especially that was amplified for me because I'd done the second Hornet fight before that. So I was already aware of something going on where there was this giant worm that was shedding and it wasn't like snow or dust in the air. It was flecks of this dying worm. So I've already got the sense that we're in a giant carcass and then to have other bodies just start falling on me. I was like, what is this place? This is messed up. And then I found out it was a fun old Colosseum. Which I think the Colosseum's so sold by the person in like the main king's chair just being dead. And it's a bunch of other people cheering behind them. That's so good.
Yeah. Okay, one more thing I want to bring up, which is I don't know if you've started any of the Grimm Troop expansion, Elliot. Have you got the circus in town?
What?
Yeah, cool. So I apologize. But once you get the circus and there's a tent where you can give... Okay, Elliot, have you got the fragile charms?
No. I don't know what that is.
There's this... Okay. God, this requires so much backstory to explain. There's these charms that you can get called fragile charms that help you out, but if you are wearing them and you die, they break and you lose them. You can purchase them again, but you go and get them. And once the circus comes to town, you can give your fragile charms to this insect who like sniffs them out and they eat them. I think their name is Divine. They eat them and then you can give them a gift of Geo. And they have this like long segmented thorax. If you give them the fragile charm and pay them some geo, they'll like eat the charm and then like suck it through their body and then deposit it out and it'll be upgraded.
Yeah.
And it's this moment of this incredible like use of disgusting insect imagery for in a perfect way to tie it towards upgrading your charm. It's just so like, it to me perfectly exemplifies why using bugs is so creative and cool, because they found all these ways to do all these gross things with them that are so in universe, they make so much sense. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, bugs are great because there's so much you can do with them. Like, there's so much variety in the insect kingdom as well.
Yes,
like it's a really great choice because they all look fucking weird. There's so much variety. Like there's so much to play with there. It's really smart.
Yeah. What a great game. High bar to clear for next month.
Well, on that note, unless anybody else has anything they just want to chat about. I saw Hero mentioned that you can dream nail the corpses that are falling from the Colosseum. Yes. And I actually, because I did that as well. I was like, what's the go here? And I'd found out you could do that to corpses to get their idea. And they're all just talking about how they wanted to be champions. And that was such a great lead into the Colosseum.
Well, now, someone's been mentioning about a bug butt. And that you tickle, and I don't know what that is.
Yeah. So you know, next to the Colosseum, there's that giant tower, and there's the big wormy guy on top.
Oh,
and he doesn't,
right.
And he doesn't say anything useful as far as I got. About halfway up, there's a hidden cavern, and if you go in there, it's his butt, and you can like hit it, and it just annoys him. And then when you go back up top, he's like, "Can you stop?"
Oh, Hollow Knight. I mean, we haven't touched on it, but this game is quite funny. One of my favorite parts is, again, you haven't got up to this, but in one of the bits where you do a boss rush, you get to a place and somebody drops down. Their name is Tiso. They're an NPC you've seen a few times, but not really in any major interaction. And it drops down and they ready their weapon and it says Tiso. And my reaction was, oh, wait, you can fight Tiso? And then a different boss just comes down and drops on top of him and kills him immediately. And it's like, oh, okay, this is awesome. Like, it's just such a funny game. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the time when Zote comes out in that first trial of the Colosseum. Like, there's some real funny moments in this game.
Really funny bits.
Yeah, absolutely. I got one. I was telling someone earlier today. I spent a lot of time wearing that charm that makes you stink, the one you get from the Dung Defender that does damage to everyone. Yeah. And then I went to one of the stores to sell some stuff, and he wouldn't talk to me because I was stinking. So then I had to make the trip all the way back to the bench to get changed so that he would talk to me. And it was
There's a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, just one of those little details that just elevates the game so highly.
Yeah. There's a part where you have this quest where you have to deliver a fragile flower from one part of the map to the other without fast traveling, without taking any damage. Mm-hmm. And if you take any damage, you lose it. But you can take this flower to like a bunch of other NPCs and they'll give you unique dialogue for you presenting this delicate rare flower to them. Yeah. And that's just the thing that you just wouldn't think of. But if you try just taking it to someone else, it's just there. And that just goes to show the love and care that has been put into this game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first 6 hours I played, I didn't think there was much to the world in terms of characters. Yeah. And it was like the more you play, the more you learn that actually there is so much lore and thought and character in this world that I was just missing at the start.
Yes, exactly. There's so much. Yeah, there's just so much cool shit built into the world.
Yeah. Cool. Well, on that note, let's talk about the next world we'll be diving into.
Yep.
We're going to be playing Transistor by Supergiant next month.
Yeah.
So that'll be on the 5th of June. It's the first Friday of the month if you're in America, or the first Saturday if you're in Australia like us. And basically, I don't think either of us has actually played Transistor.
So I have, because I played Bastion, their first game, and the game that made Supergiant Games as a company put them on the map a lot. Transistor was their second game, and I love Bastion, so I jumped into it and tried it. And I actually bounced off of it pretty hard in the first hour or so. I'm excited to see what my reaction to it will be now, because I remember bouncing off of a few systems in a while when I first played it, so a while ago. So we'll see. And I've played their other games since. They're a company that makes incredible games, like Pyre, this weird underworld soccer style game, which is totally bizarre. So they do a lot of really cool shit. So I'm excited to dive back into it.
Yeah. Yeah, something I've just been hearing a lot about the game, obviously, is that it has a fantastic soundtrack and other great audio. So we've made our discussion question for this month. Which video game has your favorite audio design?
Yeah, whether that's sound or music.
Yeah, we chose audio design to go beyond soundtrack specifically. So if you have another game that does something really cool with audio, including or beyond soundtracks, like, hit us up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's Game Club, right?
Yeah. I think we're still finding our feet, but I think that went all right.
Yeah, apart from the false starts.
Yes, there were technical issues at the start, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to hear what everyone else thought of our first Game Club, what people are excited about, what people liked, didn't like.
Yeah.
Probably the best way to do that is the same way that you can send us your answers to the discussion question, which is by emailing us at mediamdpodcast@gmail.com. So send us your discussion question for next month. Send us your thoughts on the show, anything you'd like us to tweak or keep the same.
Yep. We're also, especially in my case, pretty much always on the Doof Discord, which is a perk for being a patron. So if you're not a patron of Doof and you've just found us through the Game Club or whatever else, please consider becoming a patron. That's how stuff like this gets made.
Yeah, we don't talk about this much as well, but there's a few other Doof platforms that you can get in touch with. Obviously, this is the Doof YouTube channel, which is where you hopefully should be watching this. If you're watching it on the podcast feed, quit it. Go to the Doof YouTube channel, Doof!media at YouTube, and give us a subscribe. That would help us out. We've also started using the Doof Twitch, which you can find on Twitch, Doof Media. And there's a YouTube channel called Doof Plays, where we upload more like long-form game stuff. So all of the Twitch streams I've been doing for Hollow Knight, I did, I think, 22 or 3 hour long Twitch streams to play through all of Hollow Knight. Those are all uploaded to the Doof Plays YouTube channel. So you can find that as well if you check around on YouTube.
Yes. In fact, I'll be, both that Doof Plays YouTube and the Twitch have my sisters and I are playing through Lord of the Rings War in the North together.
Yeah.
It's fun playing there. I think, it's more probably about hanging out with the three of us than the game itself, which is all right. But yeah, so, stuff like that is on those platforms.
Yeah. I guess just a little teaser. We're going to have a special announcement coming soon, and that's all I'm going to say about it. So stay tuned.
I didn't see that. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I suppose.
Just dropping some little breadcrumbs. In the spirit of Hollow Knight, dropping a few breadcrumbs for people to piece together.
I think Hollow Knight did it a little bit better and more organically than we are right now, but that's fine.
Did it equally as subtly and equally as well earlier. Any final things to talk about for Game Club?
No, I don't think so. Just,
right,
we'll be back in a month for the next one.
Yeah.
I suppose. I will just say, I think Transistor is a lot shorter than Hollow Knight.
Yeah, true.
So I'll probably actually I'm going to try and finish Hollow Knight, and I might stream that a bit on our Discord so people can help me find all the shit I'm missing, because there's a lot of it.
Yeah. Get the Discord folks to come in and just tell you where things are, because that's what I did. And it worked.
Yeah, I think I need that. Yes, SNES, that is right. We are announcing the announcement of an announcement. That's pretty much what's happening.
Cool.
Okay, thanks. I will see you all in a month.
Bye, everyone. See you next month or on Twitch.